I joined the military.
Hello.
Joined the,
Today
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
here.
It's,
Today
yeah,
I'm here interviewing Mr. Marcus Aurelius
Daniels.
Daniels.
Yeah, it's just Marcus Daniels is fine.
Marcus Daniels, a veteran of the United States Air Force. And
Yes.
my name is Gloria Mantooth. I'm with the Unsung Heroes Living History Project. This project preserves the stories of local African American veterans whose service and lives helped shape their families and our community. So before we begin, I'd like to confirm that you would sign the release granting Unsung Heroes Living History Project, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, permission to record and use this interview as outlined in the release. Do I have your permission?
You do, yes.
All right. So, Mr. Daniels, please tell us a little bit about yourself before you joined the military, what your life was like before you joined.
Well, I was a performer actually. I was working as a actor. I was doing the circuit down in Miami, working like the Coconut Grove playhouses and stuff like that. But when I was younger, I was adopted by Flip Wilson, who was a major star at the time. And so I was just continuously performing, doing stuff. We did Vegas, we did stuff like that. I was kind of young, it was great. But then I appreciate everything Pops did. And when I say Pops, I'm talking about Mr. Wilson. But I wanted to sort of like stand on my own 2 feet, you know? So I went to college. I got an offer to go to attend the University of Miami. And I went down there for like 2 years, and I was running out of money, and then I was going to turn to him, and then he came to me one day. He said, "Hey, I want you guys to." He was talking to all the boys, myself and his two biological sons. He said, "You boys need to join the military of your own, whatever military you want to join. You should join the military, and you know that's what I suggest." So he had done 4 years in the Air Force as well, you know. So I joined. I dropped out of college and I went and joined the Air Force. And they were asking me what kind of job that I want to do. And at the time, Reagan had fired all the air traffic controllers. And so he said, if you really want, Reagan said, if you really want to help America, become an air traffic controller. I know he said it as a joke, but I thought it. I said, So early on, when I was going through the recruitment process, I realized later on that as I was going through the process, there was these girls that were handling all the medical research and stuff like that when you went in, because they would test you for your hearing and your eyes and colorblind and stuff like that. I realized that that's the first example of racism that I was exposed to because I remember going through the process and then they said Airman Daniels. And I said, yeah, step out of line. And I was like, oh, okay. And they said, you are disqualified from being an air traffic controller because you're colorblind. I said, man, I'm not colorblind. They just did the test. I passed that test. And they said, oh, no, you didn't pass the test. Yes, I did. So we went back and they went to test me again and they give me the numbers. And then the supervisor came in. He said, wow, you got them all right. I said, yeah, I'm not color. I don't know who told me I was colorblind. Then I realized the little white girls were looking at each other with the side eye, like, oh. And then I realized they were just um, disqualifying most of the black, enrollees and stuff like that. And I thought that was kind of weird because I had never seen that, Um, so they did that like twice to me. First, they said my vision was, man, my vision is better than anybody's vision in there. And then they tested me. The supervisor came out and he said, "What's going on?" I said, "I would like to know myself, actually." So that was the first real racism that I had, the only real racism I had seen. And then I remember when I was at Keesler Air Force Base. After I graduated out of basic training, I went to Keesler, and while we were there, we had a barbecue, an outdoor barbecue one day, and we were out there. And, all the airmen had to pay to be a part of the barbecue thing. And then by the time I got to the grill, we all paid, and they were out celebrating. And by the time I got to the grill, and Keesler's in Biloxi, Mississippi, which was Klan town. I didn't even realize it. So I went there, and they said, "Man, all the meat is almost gone. You better get over there and get you at least a hamburger, you know." And I ran over there, and I went, and there was one patty, and I grabbed the patty, and I put it on the grill, and I was sitting there cooking it. And while I was sitting there cooking it, this guy was a staff sergeant that had just cross trained in the air traffic control. And he just came and took my burger off the grill, put it in his mouth. I said, "Well, dude, what are you doing?" He was like, "What? You nigger?" He used the N word on me. "You nigger. You see that? I'm a staff sergeant. You don't talk to me like that." What? So I turned, I walked to the base commander's office by myself. I just walked there. I don't know if he's the base commander or some kind of colonel. He was over something. I walked in his office, and the secretary was like, "Excuse me, young airman, what are you?" And I just busted in his office. Because at that point, I had decided, you know what? I want out. I want out. I want out of this effing. No, you ain't gonna be calling me the N word and da da. I'm out. I went in there, and he was like, "Airman, calm down. Just calm down. What seems to be the problem?" And I told him what happened. And you know, I was hot too. I was mad. He said, he put on his hat. He said, "Come show me who did it." That's what he said. And I said, "Okay." So we go back, and we get in his car, and we ride down there. And when I get there, and this guy's, he's drunk. And I said, "That's him right there. What do you want?" That's what he said. Then the colonel steps out. He says, "Is this the guy?" He says, "Yeah, I'm right. I'm the guy." Colonel says, "Okay." So he gets on his walkie-talkie, da 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 da. They came, the SPs came. They took his stripes off in front of everybody. Everybody that was out there, they took his stripes off. They had somebody go to the barracks, get his gear, put it all in his duffel bag, came and walked him to the gate and told him, "You are no longer in the United States military." I was shocked. That colonel turned to me and said, "How do you feel now?" And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, sir." I started putting my shirt back on. This sounds like the kind of outfit I want to be in. And that is what convinced me that, that I'm not going to be dealing with that kind of racism. And then um, when I got to, after I graduated out of tech school, I went to Vandenberg. And when I got to Vandenberg, I was so happy. I got there, and, I was learning the base. Vandenberg was probably the best base in the whole world for me. I worked 4.5 hours a day, 5 days a week, weekends and holidays off. You know, I got all kind of pay. I got basic pay, combat pay, separate rations, VAS. I was making a lot of money. For me. I thought that was a lot of money back then for me. I was having the time of my life. Then my pops bought me. I needed a car, so my pops bought me a Volvo. So I was driving around the base, and the only other person that had a Volvo was the first sergeant, and mine's was even newer than his. But then people just got jealous. I don't know what it was. It was just all, and then all of a sudden I started having difficulty in training. And I would say, "How am I having difficulty in training? I'm better than all the other three levels." And they would say, "Oh, no, you're this, and you made a mistake here." Dude, that wasn't no real mistake. Come on, man. You know what I mean? Because I didn't do this or I didn't do that. But it was so, they were all doing the same thing I was, and they were even worse. We had a girl, Eileen Sanchez. She was a three level with me. Three level means you're a trainee, until you get rated. Because every control tower you go to, you had to get rated, meaning like you had to pass like a driver's test for that particular area. So they started labeling me with having difficulty in training, and I was like, because what happened is one day the brothers was up there. I had a black supervisor. His supervisor was black. Then I had a guy who was right below that supervisor who was over me. He was black. And so, you get to the control tower in the morning, and his name was he was a tech sergeant. He was a master sergeant, but he was just a plain master sergeant because you got master sergeant, then you had chief master, chief senior master sergeant, then you had chief master sergeant. And they said, so who's going to go down and get breakfast? So I was like, just Aaron Daniel, you volunteered? No, man, I ain't volunteered because at Vandenberg, you had to walk down all the stairs. There was a lot of stairs you had to walk down. Then you had to go to base ops, get breakfast for everybody, and then bring it back up the stairs. So they said, Aaron Daniels, it's your turn to go get his breakfast. And then I didn't like it or whatever. So, but I went down. I took everybody's order. I went down there. I got breakfast. So about maybe a week ago, who's going to go get breakfast? About a week later, who's going to go get breakfast? I said, man, I ain't going to get nobody breakfast. And so they said, well, who else around here can go? And they looked at me. I was like, man, why do I have to get breakfast? Why can't y'all get me breakfast? Well, no, because you're the lowest ranking person. What are you talking about? You got all these three levels here. Why I gotta go? Now, remember, all these guys that are above me are brothers, because we said so. So I was hot. So I went downstairs to base ops to the cafeteria, and I'm getting breakfast for everybody. And then who walks in? General Watkins, two-star general. And I'm standing at the counter waiting on everybody to get their breakfast. I didn't even order breakfast because I felt like you guys should be able to get your own damn breakfast. And I just couldn't, even if I got drunk, I can anyway. He said, Airman, what's wrong? Why are you upset? I said, I'm upset because, every time I turn around, I'm the one that's got to go get everybody breakfast. I got to walk all these up the stairs with all this food and get everybody breakfast. So he said, so Airman, um, you're the only one that has to come and get breakfast? Yeah. Are you the lowest person on the totem pole? And I said, no, sir, there's other people too, but they make me do it. He said, really? He said, well, get the breakfast and let's go here, give me some, and let's all go up there together. Okay. So we walk upstairs and we walk in there, and when we walk in the control tower, I'm walking up the stairs first. So they say, breakfast. And then after me is the general. And the general starts handing out everybody's breakfast, and they all looking at each other. And the general said, yeah, how y'all doing? He goes, Aaron Daniels just advised me that, he's had to come down here and get everybody's breakfast. And I told Aaron Daniels, thank you. He's been such a gracious host, Aaron Daniels, as he says. But I just want to let all y'all know that I told Aaron Daniels that this will be the last time that he'll have to come down and get everybody's breakfast. We're in agreement, right? And they were all like, yes, sir. And so June said, all right, tower looks good, All right, y'all have a good day and da 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 da. So when they all left, they turned to me. I said, well, hey, I ain't going to have to get nobody breakfast because the general already told me that if anybody make me get breakfast, he gave me his number and told me to call his office and let him know who it was. So that was the end of it. I thought. But then, but with that said, I had such a wonderful time at Vandenberg. I mean, we did things that nobody else. We were all sitting in the day room one day, and they were all the GIs were complaining about how bad the base was, how bad the job was. I was like, "What are y'all talking about? What are y'all talking about?" I say, "We got all these handsome men here. We got all these beautiful girls, all these young airmen. We are responsible for our own happiness." So then I said, "Why don't we do something?" And they were like, "What?" I said, "I tell you what. Why don't everybody chip in about $20, right? Give me $20. We'll go to the commissary and buy a whole bunch of food, barbecue, everything like that, and we'll just go to the beach and have a party. Everybody goes." And they were like $20 because you gotta remember 1980, $20 was a lot of money. So everybody was like, "Nah, man, da 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 da." So I said, "Okay, fine." So I took 100 of my own dollars, and then I got a couple of 20s from other people, and so I paid for everything. So I said, "Okay, so tomorrow morning We're going to go down to Refugio Beach. We're going to barbecue. We're going to bring a basketball. We're going to do all this stuff. It was a huge hit. Everybody showed up, even people with no money. Everybody showed up, and all the girls were there, and they were cooking, and we were playing basketball, and we were in the ocean, and we were having so much fun. And the guys were talking to the girls, and the girls were talking to the guys. Oh, it was huge. And then um, somebody had left and went to the phone because there was no cell phones. Somebody had left and went to the phone and called some other people, and then some more girls showed up, and there was bikinis everywhere, and there was so much food. So at the end of the day, we were right on the beach. I don't know if you ever been to Refugio, but they got a basketball court right on the beach. So the guys was out there playing, all clean fun, no fights, no arguments, no nothing, having fun, everybody eating. So at the end of the day, when we were cleaning up and putting everything away, we got home probably about 10 or 12 o'clock that night. The next day, no, before we left, I told everybody, hey, if y'all want to do this again, we could do it again next week or the week after, you know? I'm telling you, that Monday morning, before I even got out of my bed, there was knocking at the door. Hey man, here's my $20. Here's my 20. Here's my 20. I had something like $500 the second time around to go back out there. And we started doing that, and everybody would come, and then it became word of mouth, and everybody was there every weekend, and we was partying, having we were having so much fun. We were cracking jokes, and that's the other thing too, because I was new, and one night some airmen thought that they could just jump on me and start cracking on me and telling jokes and stuff like that, and I was in the day room, and it was me against like 20 of them, and I was tearing their ass. They didn't know. They didn't even realize who they was attacking. I had grew up with a whole bunch of jokes, and I was laying it on them. I was cracking. I was like, dude, you so ugly. Your girlfriend have to trick or treat on the phone. I mean, I was getting them all. I was killing them. I was like, your girlfriend's so fat. They had to grease the main gates to get her through there. The brothers went back and said, man, we can't mess with that brother. That brother got too. This is no lie. We would go to parties. As soon as I show up, I'd have about, ask Dennis, he'll tell you, I had about maybe 10 or 20 guys run up to me. Marcus, don't say nothing about me, man. Don't mess with me, man. Don't crack on me. I had one guy there, his name was Tim. Tim only wore gray. He only wore his fatigues, his uniform, and gray. I used to call him 1,001 ways to wear gray. And I used to say, yo, man, before I wear my gray suit, man, I have to call Tim. Hey, Tim, can I wear gray with purple? You could wear gray with purple, but you can't mix no brown when you got the purple on. You could take the gray out, the purple off, and then, and everybody would be crying. And then we had another guy, Nate. Nate was Nate was trying to talk stuff, but Nate was so black. I told I told Nate if we was in a car and the police was chasing us, he would say, "I'm in high pursuit of three Negroes and a black leather jacket."
So
I said, Nate,
suffice it to say, you felt like the military provided a sense of brotherhood that was different from
oh yeah,
civilian life.
oh yeah, I'm gonna tell you, we were really close. We were we were. I'm telling you, this is the real raw fun we had. I told Nate, I said, dude, you so black every time you get out of my car, the oil light come on. And when I would tell his jokes, it would spread throughout the base. Everybody would say, oh man, don't mess with that cat. He's funny, he's funny. And
But
then,
was
go ahead.
Vandenberg the only base you were stationed at after basic
No,
training?
no, no. No, no, no. That's what I was going to get to. That's the other part. So, but anyway, um, I was having a great time. And I cracked on Dennis. Dennis was an electrician. And Dennis came in to the chow hall because everybody went to the chow hall to get, you got free food there. And Dennis came in one day. He had mud up to this eye right here, right? So we was all sitting around the chow hall, and I said, Dennis, what dump truck you done ran into? Anyway, it had been raining up at Vandenberg, and Dennis was on a ladder. He was some kind of electrician, and he fell into a ditch that was nothing but mud, and he got mud all the way up here. So Dennis said, I quit. So we all thought he was laughing. So Dennis said, nah, man, I quit. I'm going down there and I'm going to tell him I quit. So I said, Dennis, you can't quit. You in the military. You can't just wake up. You going to wake up and tell him you quit? He said, that's right. So he left the chow hall, went to base operations, to the main office to tell him he wants out. He quit. So they took Dennis and they put Dennis in a room and they shocked him. I mean, they put electrodes on Dennis and they were asking. They were shocking him, and he came back to the chow hall. His hair was all singed. I said, Dennis, why your hair smell like that? He said, man, they just shocked me, man. They was just in there electrocuting me, man. And then they told me, you still want to get out of here? He said, he looked at me. No, that's okay. I was laughing so hard. I was crying. I was laughing so hard. I was like, Dennis, you can't just quit the military like that, man. You know. And then I started talking to the brothers for the first time, really understanding what kind of job they had. And Dennis was like electrician, and then we had another guy in there, Nate, the same guy. Nate counted screws. That's all he did. He went to work and counted. They would give him a big bucket of screws, and he would sit there all day and count screws. And I was like, "What? What kind of job is that? What?" And he was like, "Well, Marcus, what kind of job you got?" And I was embarrassed, really. And then I told him I was like, I was an air traffic controller. And then Nate said, "See, you ain't got no better job than me because one of them planes gonna run your behind over." I was like, "No, brother. I talk to aircraft." And they swore me up and down that I was lying. You don't talk to aircraft. They don't give brothers that kind of job. I said, they didn't give me that job. I had to work for it. What are you talking about? I had just gotten rated, even though I had difficulty in rate in training, but I did get rated. And so nobody believed me. So when I went down to the control tower, they said he don't really work there. And I went and punched in the cipher code and went in there and went to work. They said they gave him the code. They just gave him the code. He don't work up there. Then I let them all come upstairs and see me work. Because back then you could do that. As long as they were in the military, they had on the uniform. I can admit them into the control tower, which not everybody can do that. But because I was a 5 level, they still didn't believe that was my job. I was like, man, that's what I do. And the other thing I got a chance to do is fly airplanes. Because when you're an air traffic controller, you had to know the aircraft characteristics. So they had it set up where you can actually fly. So I've flown like jets, F4s, T-33s, C-130, C-141s, helicopters. Because the pilots would say you'd ask you request to fly, and sometimes we had the supervisor flying up in the control tower, and he was like, "Yeah, I mean you want to go," but you always had to go through a ejection training, in order for each and every aircraft before you can get in there. And I was like, man, wouldn't that be cool if you could get in the plane and just pull out and jump out and pop out? Man, when I got in that plane, I was like, whatever you do, don't, don't you keep your hands. I told the pilot, don't even try to play around with them two pieces up there, because you had to pull it and hold yourself down like that. I was like, don't even touch them two. But when I was in training, I was like, that's gonna be cool, man. I can reach up, pull, man. No, you get in them planes, it's like a continuous roller coaster ride for an hour. That's all you're doing is flipping and turning. He gave me the stick. He was like, "So what do you want to do?" I said, "Which way is home?" I just want to go home. He was turning and twisting and up and rolling and barreling. I was so sick. I didn't throw up though, but I could have. you know. But I was having fun. So, and then another thing I did at Vandenberg, which when we were there, the space shuttle came in on piggyback for the first time. And the space shuttle came in on the 747, and I cleared it to land. And the news was up there, ABC News, so I was on the news and stuff like that. It was little stuff like that. I enjoyed being at that base. But what happened was I was increasingly being disliked, and I didn't know why. I knew why, but I didn't believe it, because you was brother. I had a lot of extracurricular stuff that I was doing up there. I was good friends with a lot of celebrities. One of them came up there, Jermaine Jackson's particularly. Jermaine came up there to visit, and people just got jealous. I don't even understand it. And Randy came up one time and we hung out a little bit and I took him around the base and people, I thought they'd be excited, but it was like, who does he think he is? And I'm like, I never thought of myself being upper crust or, I didn't think like that. It wasn't like that about me. But anyway, to make a long story short, I parked, I went to work one day and I parked my car in the visitor spot, the base ops. My brand new Volvo, it was it was rust colored. It was really nice too. I had it with a European makeup on it. It was hot. Clean tires, clean wheels, none of that tinted window stuff, none of that stuff. It was just a clean vehicle. Everybody was talking about it, which I thought was like, I mean, I've always been riding around in a lot of Rolls Royces and Mercedes. I mean, a Volvo to me was no big deal. So I was in the control tower working one day, and I get a call from my supervisor, Sergeant Gatson. Aaron Daniels, you parked in my spot. So I was thinking about it. Wait, wait I didn't park in your spot. I parked in the visitor spot. He said, yeah, that's my spot. So I said, Sergeant Gatson, that's not your spot. That's first come, first served. It's visitors. He said, well, I park there every day. I said, Sergeant Gatson, that's not true. It doesn't work like that. So he said, if you don't come down and move your car, I'm going to have it towed. So I said, well, have it towed. That's it. Just have it towed. So I hung up. So that was from the black sergeant that called me. Then about maybe 5 minutes later, I get a call from Lou Ho, who was Samoan. He was the chief controller of the control tower. So he calls me up, Aaron Daniels. Yes, sir. He said, didn't Sergeant Gatson give you a direct order to come down here and move your car? I said, no, sir, he didn't give me a direct order. He asked me to come and move it. And I told him I wasn't going to move it. And he said he was going to have it towed. And I told him to have it towed. So he goes, well, I'm giving you a direct order. Come and move your car. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, they really don't understand what they're asking me to do. Because in the control tower, the FAA and the Air Force have laws that in the control tower, you must have a 7 level and a 5 level at all times. Anybody's moving out, but you got to have the skeleton crew. You got to have a 5 or 7. Any 5 or 7 level that leaves the control tower is committing a crime, punishable by court martial or something like that. So I said to Sergeant Chief Ho, I said, are you serious? You want me to come down and move my car? He goes, that's right. I'm giving you a direct order. Now, everything in the control tower is recorded, the lines, everything. So Sergeant Jones, who I was on duty with, he said, do they know that they're asking you to leave the tower, that it's only you and I? I said, he's the chief controller and the co-chief. They should know that. I'm just 5 level. So I go downstairs to move my car. And when I get down there, the SPs are surrounding the car with the dogs and everything. So I go to put my keys in the car and SPs, they draw down on me. What are you doing? What do you mean, what am I doing? I'm moving my car. He said, that's not your car. Step away from the car. So I go and I go to put my keys in the car and they pull the guns up. Hey, I said step away from the car. So I step away from the car. So they sick the dogs on me. Yeah. So he says, get to the ground. So I fall to the ground. The dog's biting me and stuff like that. And They got the guns drawn on me. And who drives up? The captain, Captain Kovar, who's over the whole air traffic control facility. And he goes, "What the hell's going on here?" And he said, "Do you know this airman?" He said, "Yeah, he works for me." He said, "And whose vehicle is that?" He said, "That's his vehicle." He said, "Well, is he allowed to park his car here?" He said, the captain goes, "That's the visitor spot. He's allowed to park there." He goes, "Well, we got a call there was unauthorized vehicle and an other unauthorized personnel on the base." And the captain says, "I don't know what the hell's going on, but I'm about to go in here and find out, and heads are gonna roll." That's what he said to me. So anyway, make a long story short, we all in the major's office. Mel Gasson had just made tech. They took all his stripes. Blue Hole was a master sergeant. They took him down to an airman basic. Airman. He had like one stripe, right? So we sitting in the major's office, and the major says to me, he says, "Airman Daniels, there's been a grave mistake on our part." Now these are all the white officers saying, "I want to apologize to you for what happened," and da 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 da, and uh, we have to have some conversation. So I said, so they're all in there, right? So I said, "Well, there's only one problem with this," and they all look at each other. "What's the problem?" I said, "Well, you know, Air Force rules and FAA rules say that you must have a 5 and 7 level in the control tower at all times. Uh, Master Sergeant Ho called me and gave me a direct order to leave the control tower, which means that there was some laws violated that have to be addressed. You know, I mean, I could go to the IG, Inspector General, but that's." And so then Major Burns looked at me. He looked at everybody in there and he said, "Emma Daniels, can you step out?" I stepped out of there. And then next thing I know, everybody's coming out after me. About an hour later, everybody's coming out, and they don't even look at me. Sergeant Gasson didn't look at me. Lou Hole didn't look at me. They're all coming out. They're all looking at me, looking away from me. I mean, you're right there, and they're all like, you know. So the major calls me in his office, and he goes, him and Captain Kobach said, "Listen, they're going to be coming after you, and I probably won't be able to protect you. But what I can do is transfer you off base." And that's how I left Vandenberg. And I hated it. I hated, but I love that. He said the only place I could send you is to Clark Air Base in the Philippines. Now, everybody that left left Vandenberg, every airman that left Vandenberg that went to Clark got washed out of the career field. They washed out because Clark was a level 3 facility, and it was like a death sentence. It was known that any controller that left Vandenberg that was going to Clark, they were going to get washed out. And there was a guy I was friends with him. His name was Calvin Daniels. He had just left, went to Clark, and when we called over to see how he was doing, he was already washed out. It's like, damn, he only been there like 3 months, and he already washed out. So everybody was smirking and laughing because that's where they were sending me. Do you know I was the very first airman, the very first one, and not just an airman, but the very first black guy that went from Vandenberg Air Force Base to Clark and got rated. Now I ain't gonna lie, I had difficulty in training. I really did because at Vandenberg we used to talk to 2, 3 airplanes, maybe in a full day. Maybe you was doing busy if you did talk to 10. But at Clark, in 1 hour you would be talking to like 60 airplanes. You know, so it was like constant. It was like going from here to there. So, but when I got there, what I didn't do is I didn't go downtown and mess with all the girls and stuff like that. I went to my barracks, I went to my room, and I studied. And I consistently studied every night, just practice, da da da. And I had other airmen coming in, other brothers that was there that came in and helped me. I mean, really helped. That's when the brothers there, it was different. being in a foreign country because the brothers really, I mean, it was a big thing. You know, we would speak to each other because nobody else spoke to us and stuff like that. It was a real unity, you know. And the other thing about Vandenberg is that nobody could out crack me, meaning that they couldn't crack harder than me. Nobody could out joke me. I was the best joke teller. But another thing that they didn't factor in is even though I was funny, they figured that I couldn't fight. But I was a very good fighter. So I had several fights. Dennis will tell you, Dennis was there for two of them. And there was this guy, he was messing with me, and I kept telling him, hey, man, I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight. Yeah, because you ain't this, you ain't this. And he came up and I said, Dre, I don't want to hurt you. Really, I don't want to hurt you. And he came swinging at me, and I said, dude, you swing at me one more time. And right when I said that, he swung again, and I hit him one time, and it detached his retina. And they had to take him to the hospital. And I felt really bad, but I knew I was going to get kicked out of the military. But Dre, in his all honesty, realized that he was wrong, that he was the aggressor, and he told the authorities that I accidentally hit him in the eye while we were playing basketball with my elbow. I was so happy. I went to the hospital and gave him some flowers. And Dennis was like, "Yeah, man, I heard what you did to Andre." I was like, "But then they had a friend, another guy named Martin, and Martin. We were playing basketball. And Martin said, "Yeah, you hit my friend Andre." I was like, "Dude, that was come on, man." So he got into it with me, right? So I put some hands on him real quick, clack, 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 and then he stood there, and I said, "Now what you gonna do? Nothing. You're gonna stand there and just bleed." Everybody was there, and then he went and called the SPs. I was trying to get out of there. As soon as I got to the door, the SPs grabbed me. Come here. So I was standing on but I was leaving the base. So you know, so I told, but everybody was there. They said, "Hey, he tried to tell him don't mess with him," and he kept messing with him. And so I had witnesses too. So when I got to Clark, it was really totally different. It was reverse, you know, and that's when things really started really happening. I mean, I got to fly airplanes, jets, big time. I was doing all kind of stuff. I joined a band, and you want to hear something? We were very famous while we were there. We played the TV shows, the Filipino TV shows over there, and we were playing different basses because over at Clark they had Subic bass, they had Camp John Hay, and we were playing all these basses. And just the other day, I was looking. They got these groups online where they said Clark Air Base, and I remember Clark and stuff like that. And they said at Clark at the Airmen's Club we had our own bases and our own bands and stuff like that. And they were showing all the bands, and we were one of the bands. I was shocked. I called my other uh, Tawana, she was the lead singer. I said, Tawana, you won't believe it. She was like, what? I said, they got us in there. Da, 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 da. She says, no. I said, yeah. So now when you go back and look at nostalgia pictures, they have our band up there, Clark Air Base, Night Force Band, and me and Tawana and all of us. And she was shocked. So we did, I mean, it was really, really memorable, really memorable. And then I had some situations there too. What happened was there was this brother. He was my supervisor. His name was John Coleman, and John probably was the best air traffic controller you ever want to meet. But he was a brother. He was kind of big, a little bit overweight. Looked like Fat Albert, to be honest with you. But he was so funny. I mean, I was very good at telling jokes, but John was even better than I was. He'd tell jokes, I'd be crying laughing. He was just funny. And probably the best airman. He was probably the best friend I ever had while I was in the military. We were very good friends. Well, he was my supervisor. So they court-martialed him because he was a little bit overweight.
Wow.
He was about 4 or 5 pounds overweight, and they court-martialed him. Yeah, I know. And I told Chief Rankin, I said, Chief, why y'all messing with John? Why y'all doing that, man? He's a brother, and y'all just doing it because he's black. And so the chief threw up his hands. He said, Aaron Danes, it ain't got nothing to do with me. I didn't do this, da 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 da. It's, his whole thing and stuff like that. So I was pissed, you know. So one night we were in the control tower together, and I was up there. Brad Shortall was this. Uh, he was a white sergeant that had just made tech, and his name was Brad Shortall. He was like a, you know, one of those white dudes that was, on the way to being, a chief, and he couldn't do no wrong. He was the golden boy of the control tower, right? So we were up there one night, and it was his birthday, so he brings these girls up there, which you're not supposed to do. They're drinking alcohol, which you're not supposed to do. But then he starts bad mouthing the tower chief, controller, Senior Master Sergeant Rankin. So at the time, I was a senior airman, and I said, Sergeant Shortall, you shouldn't be talking like that in front of the three levels. We had trainees up there, He said, what? I know you ain't talking to me. Yeah, I'm talking to you. You don't talk about uh, senior management like that. You're setting a bad example for the three levels. I'd appreciate it if you didn't do that, right? So he said, who the F are you to talk to me and tell me da 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 da? I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just telling you, I don't appreciate it. And if you don't mind, you know, knock it off. You see that? I'm going to be master. Dude, that ain't got nothing to do with you saying the things that you've been saying. So he says, get the F out of my control tower. He's talking to a brother, right? He told me to get out. I said, okay. So I left. I was like, now I can go downtown and party. I'm off. You get off early, you going out. The next day I go to work. Chief Rankin said, Aaron Danes, I got to talk to you. I got a bone to pick with you. And I go, well, what's the problem? He goes, the problem is last night, Sergeant Shortall had to throw you out of the control tower because you caused a disturbance that he had to shut down air traffic control operations just to throw you out of the control tower. And he wrote it all down in the log, right? So I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, so you're probably looking at a court martial. This is what he tells me, right? So I said, well, what I didn't tell you that happened earlier, and I'm going to tell you now, disclose it now. When he brought all those girls up there and they were dancing in the control tower in the windows and stuff like that, one of the girls kicked the runway closed sign up because they were up there dancing. And we had a sign that when there was anybody on the runway, you hit the sign and close it. Everybody knew the runway was closed. And you would announce it over the radio, runway is closed. The girl kicked the runway sign open. So we had a Mac 141 call for clearance for takeoff. And Mac says, Tower Mac, such a heavy is ready for takeoff. And he was working local, but he had been drinking, which is 12 hours before you're supposed to drink, right? But I'm not saying nothing because number one, I'm leaving out of the military. I'm pissed with the thing with John Coleman. This is their thing. These are white boys that can do some stuff, and you just move on. So he goes, Mac 141, da 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 da, Wincom, Cliff takeoff. So Mac goes, Roger Tower. Then they come back, Tower, Mac 141, da da da, one heavy 141, we're ready for takeoff. Then he goes, I just gave him his. He goes, Mac, such a 180 heavy, clear for takeoff. Wincom, altimeter 299.2. Roger Tower. Then the Mac says, Tower, Mac, let me get this straight. Are we clear for takeoff? And then Brad is like, do they not understand? And he's got a beer in his hand, drinking the beer. You're clear for takeoff. I already gave this the third time I'm giving you a clearance for takeoff. And then Mac comes back with, okay, so we understand Mac 141 is clear for takeoff with a truck on the runway. What? So we look out there, there's TA, base officers on the runway, right? And I'm sitting there. Now I already know, but I ain't saying nothing. I'm working ground. I'm not working local control. The sign was down. I put the sign down on my own. I know the girls had kicked it up, but I had forgot that the sign was kicked up and stuff like that. But that's what he's supposed to know anyway. We all supposed to know that, right? But he was working local, and he's the supervisor in charge, right? So he says, "Close the runway. Matt, cancel takeoff clearance. Hold short the runway. Da 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 da." So we called TA. TA said, "Yeah, what y'all gonna do? Run to have the plane run us over?" So they come off the runway and stuff like that. So I told Sergeant when the chief was telling me I'm going to be court-martialed, I said, "What Brad Shortall didn't tell you that this happened and this happened, that he was drinking, that he had girls up there." And I never said nothing disrespectful to him. So right there, one of the three levels walks in the door, and I said, Larry Bishop was his name. Asked Airman Bishop what happened. He turned to Airman Bishop, did Airman Daniels curse out? He says, no, Airman Daniels just asked him not to talk about you. He was saying nasty things about you. And Airman Daniels asked him not to say that in front of you. So Chief turns to me and said, well, I can take care of myself. Yeah, you could, but you wasn't there. I was. And it's my responsibility to say something to him. So he said, how long before he cleared the aircraft for takeoff? Because I can't just go to him with this and not have any evidence. So I said, I think it was about 2 hours after we got here. So we went down, we pulled the tapes, and he pulled it to right where 2 hours was, and it was right there, 2 hours. And he says, the Mac, the whole thing goes down. He goes, so we go back to his office, and we're sitting in there, and Brad Shortall walks in, and he looks at me like this. And so he says, Airman Daniels, can you step out? I said, yeah. So I stepped out. They did all the investigation after all of that stuff. You know what they gave Brad Shortall? They gave him a letter of reprimand, a slap on the wrist. And I went to Chief Rankin and I said, are you kidding me? He goes, Airman Daniels, I knew you was going to come in here with this. It's out of my hands. Major Burns, the major and all those guys, they took care of it. They did the thing. I ain't got nothing to do with it like that. So what I did was I knew I was getting out. So I made an appointment to see the Inspector General. But I waited until I out processed from the base. And then once I out processed from the base, I went downtown and I was off base. And then instead of leaving out of Clark, where I was supposed to leave out, I took a commercial flight out of Manila because I knew once I went to see the IG and I told him what happened, and I told him when I get back to America, I'm going to the news and I'm gonna tell the news about everything that was done. I told him that night, that day. I told him about I had a 12 o'clock meeting with them at 12 p.m. I had already processed out of the base at 10 a.m. I was off base, but I still was able to, you still have access to the base. I went and had the meeting with the IG at 12, and then I left out of there around 1:30. I left there, and then I went down to Manila, and then I left Manila that night about 5 p.m. So when I got to Travis, I they finally out processed me, and let me tell you what happened. I was leaving the base, and I got to pulling up to the base to leave, and the arm comes down, closing the base. So I said to the guy, dude, he said, hey, are you Airman Daniels? And I said, no. He said, we have to close the base because we're looking for, they told us to stop Airman Daniels because they can make you stay in the military and put you in jail because I went outside of the chain of command and they could penalize you for that. You could go to jail. But I said, no, 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 man. I said, man, I gotta go, man. I gotta go. I got an airplane to catch, man. I gotta get down to um uh San Francisco airport. I got a flight, man. You can't, I gotta leave. And he said, all right, I'm gonna let you go. And he let me go and he closed it after that and they closed the base. I got off, right? So I drove from there and went down to Vandenberg, went to my boys who's still in the military down there. So I went to the control tower to use the Autobahn. because that's the only way I can call Clark without having to pay for it, which was a lot of money. Back then, 1986, I think, 86. So I get on the phone and I call, and Sergeant Donald Cord answers the phone. Clark Tower, Sergeant Cord, and I said, DC. And he goes, "Who is this?" I said, "This is Airman Daniels." You know what he said? He said, "Man, every brother here tips their hat to you." I go, "What happened?" He said, "Bruh, they bust him down. They took Brad." He said, "They bust everybody. They bust the major. They bust the captain. They took all Brad's stripes, all of that." And he said the only one they didn't mess with was Chief Rankin, because Chief Rankin was the only one that was opposed to everything that they had did with Brad, giving him a letter of reprimand. He said, but all the brothers here, John too, John was still there. He said, we all tip our hat to you, brother. What you did, you're the one that made a difference. And I go, you're kidding? He goes, no, man, no. What you did, we still. He said, matter of fact, Brad is driving around trying to find you. He's got some Filipinos. They probably gonna try to kill you or something like that. They already know that. So I said, man, if he better be glad he didn't find me, because I knew people too. We all know people, you know, and I
Mm.
wouldn't have went for that. So, and that was pretty much it after that. And then I called Chief Rankin, and he goes, Airman Daniels, I admire what you did. I admire everything, the way you did it, how it all came down, and everybody paid for it. But now, what are you gonna do? I said, I'm gonna live my life, man. I'm gonna live my life. I'm gonna just do what I had to do, and I said, but you know what? It's been real, and I learned a lot, and I'm really appreciative to my experiences. I mean, I had a great time at Clark. I really did. As a matter of fact, when I left Clark, out of 7 nights, I used to dream about the Philippines 6 nights of the seven. That's how much fun I had while I was there. It was a strange dichotomy because even though I was having a lot of fun, I was having a lot of huge challenges on the other side of that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of weird because at first I was dealing with racism from basically black soldiers. And then when I went to Clark, the brothers was, and I didn't really have any problems with the whites either. I got along with everybody,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Well,
It
that
was
brings me
just,
to the next uh the next question
go
is
ahead, go for it.
your transition to civilian life. How did that go?
It was excellent. I first went out, I started auditioning, and Pops was telling me, and he was helping me out and stuff like that. But, I've since done about 40 films. And out of those 40 films, I've even starred or co starred in half of them. I've done a lot of films, a lot of work, a lot of stuff. I work with the Jacksons. I play guitar. You know that song Jermaine does, Do What You Do?
Mhm.
Why don't you do? I'm on there.
Oh.
So I could send you the stuff. I could send you a lot of the pictures and stuff. And I was able to talk to Jermaine to come over. Michael, I talked to Mike. Mike went over, and he was trying to get me to come over there while he was there. We had some weird things happen because they were on tour on the Victory tour, and Michael and Jermaine called me one night at the Snowtown, and we were talking for about an hour. And then Michael got on the phone. And so John, my supervisor, was like, that nigga over there talking about he on the phone with Michael Jackson and Michael and Jermaine Jackson. He ain't on no phone with Mike and Jermaine. And they pulled the tapes and they listened to him. And I never even knew it. And someone told me later on, they pulled the tapes. They was listening to you. So there's tapes out there somewhere with me and the whole conversation with them. And and then also with Whitney, because Whitney wasn't a star at the time. Jermaine had introduced me to her, and when I went back to Clark, I was telling everybody, "There's this girl coming, Whitney Houston. She's gonna be the bomb, and she's gonna be this." And it was like, man, nobody never heard no damn Whitney Houston. And that same year, it was 1984. That whole year, she blew up, and she came with "You Give Me Good Love," and she used to call me all the time. while I was up there, but nobody knew she wasn't a big star at the time. As a matter of fact, I was on the phone one night. I was on the phone with Hazel and Jermaine, and Hazel said, "Jermaine, come on, we got to go. Marcus, we love you, but we got to go because Martin, Marvin Gaye's dad just shot him." I go, "You kidding?" She goes, "No." So we got to go. So I was like, "Hey man, let me know what happened." And everybody was up there, they could hear me talking and stuff. I said, and when I got off the phone, I said, "Yeah, Marvin Gaye's dad just shot him." And then the next day, we find out that Marvin had died. And then people start saying, "This is this nigga really talking to, you know, is this real?" And then they did an interview with me. Stars and Stripes did an interview with, Flip Wilson's son and stuff like that. It was all over the papers and stuff, and people would come to the control tower. It was kind of cool. It was interesting. It was a little different than Vandenberg, but I love Vandenberg. I love that place so well. Let me tell you something. I had so much fun at Vandenberg. I can't begin to tell you the nights and the jokes that we used to tell. Oh my God. We and me, Dennis, we would go every weekend. I would make sure we did something. We went somewhere. We did something. We'd have a 4 day weekend, and I said, "Hey, let's drive down to Mexico." And we all drive to Mexico, and we'd all get in the car, and we'd be driving. I was driving. I was driving the Volvo, and the conversation was cool. Everybody be laughing and stuff. And then Dennis said, "Let's get some yak, some cognac." And them two in the back would start talking with the. I never drank, even in the military. I never drank. And maybe about an hour into the drive, everything was copacetic. Everybody laughing. The next thing, no, they go, yeah, they were drunk as a skunk.
Well,
We
Marcus,
had so much fun. I
I
know
know,
I got a
I
lot of
know,
stories,
I
girl.
know you got a lot of stories, but
I ain't even.
we're
I'm
gonna go
sitting there
ahead
thinking
and
about. Yeah, I still got even more. But Vandenberg was great. The people were great. The people around there were great. Uh, it was just the few people that was on base. But other than that, Vandenberg was like one of the most. The fog that came on, it always seemed to be so clean and cool and fresh. And the military was probably the best 4 years of my life, really,
wow.
even
So
with all those challenges.
what advice would you give to a young family member considering military service today?
I told my family, my daughter was contemplating on going. I told her, "You done lost your mind. The America right now is just too imperialistic." I heard this white woman who was in the military, she was a colonel. She said that she was getting out, and she said she's making sure that none of her children come into the military because America has an imperialistic issue. And I was like, she's right because you cannot, the rest of the world is, no, it ain't for us no more.
Mhm.
We can't go and do those fight. We can't fight like that no more. We're peacekeepers.
Mhm.
We're there to
How would you like
deter.
your service to be remembered by future generations?
You know, um, when I first got into air traffic control, when we first there, the first day of school, they told us, they said, out of all of y'all there, um, we're gonna lose more than half of y'all after y'all do your first test, first quiz, because even going through school, tech school, if you fail any test or anything, you got washed back. And then you fail again, you get washed out. So you were only given two chances. And I remember when there was only two brothers in the whole class. It was like 30 of us. And they said, "So we're going to lose half of y'all by tomorrow. You ain't going to be here." And so there was this white guy in there. And he was, rumor, he was a Klansman. And he said, "So Airman Danes is going to be, I'm going to hate to see you go." I said, "Yeah, because you ain't going to be here." And the next day, he was in the chow hall. He was in a different class because he had failed the test. And I was messing with him, and I was like, "So how did it feel to be way back there? It's gonna take a time. It's gonna take time for my voice to reach you because you're so far back there." This idiot gonna talk about his favorite dog is a Dalmatian. I said, "You a racist with a Dalmatian dog?" He said, "Yeah, it's a white dog with black spots." No, man. That's a black dog with white spots. That's probably why he's confused. I was cracking jokes on it. But um, I was the only person from my original class to graduate, the only one to graduate on the original time. And out of all 30 of us, I think only three of us actually passed, and one of them was another brother, Franklin Irvin. I'm still in contact with Irvin. That's the other thing too. I'm still in contact with a lot of my Army buddies. I lost John Coleman. I cried. I lost Sergeant Shockey. He died. I went to his funeral. He really saved my butt. He really did. He saved me from them, and he told me why. We had a phone call. He told me why he did it. He said, I never understood why nobody liked you because you was young, you were handsome, you were smart, intelligent, and you were a better controller than a lot of those guys were. And he said, but anyway, so I lost him. I lost a lot of good friends, a lot. DC, uh, DC called me one day and he said, Aaron Daniels, can you help me? I'm sick. I need started a GoFundMe. I was like, dude, not only did you retire from the military, you 100%. What do you need a GoFundMe for the military? He said, man, I got bills. I was like, DC, when are you gonna live? When are you gonna just walk away from all this work, man? Live. And he said, come on, man, he said, just help me out. And I was like, all right, I'll send you some money. So I sent him like $500 for his GoFundMe. And then about maybe 2 weeks later, his daughter was online saying that the operation that he died. And I used to reach back and try to reach out to all the airmen that I haven't talked to in a while, but I stopped because I reached out to 10 people one night and all 10 of them had passed. So I was like, and then one of the guys that was with us at Vandenberg is Gerald Thomas, I think. He's on Facebook with us. He just got diagnosed with cancer, and I'm like, Jesus, you know. So, but it's a hurting feeling because these people have memories of you and your experiences with them, and they take it with them, and that's the part that hurts. And I love Dennis. I told you I love Dennis, you know, and Dennis was one of those people that was there, that witnessed you know, the whole experience. So, but
Well, that's
I
why
want
we're
to
doing
thank
this
you.
project.
I appreciate that.
Before
I
we
get to
lose
say,
all of the stories and the
yeah,
memories, we want to preserve them. And wow,
yeah,
thank you for
yeah.
sharing.
I got a lot of more stories. So just know that. Just know it was really exciting. It really was. Really, really was. So thank you so much. You have a wonderful day now.
Well, thank you for your service. Your
Thank you
experiences
for
are
your support.
important, a part of our community's history, and we are
Yes.
honored to preserve them for future generations. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Daniels.
you, man.
It's
All
been
right.
it's been
All
enlightening.
right, Miss Mantooth.
All right, you take it easy, and I look forward to seeing you. Hope to see you
Okay,
soon.
ma'am.
Bye bye.
Okay, you have a wonderful